So I know I just did a video on this place, on this planting right here. But another thing that is worth pointing out is the survival rate here. As I've been walking around, I've seen very, very few dead trees. There are some. There's definitely, like any planting, it has its fair share of trees that did not survive, but it's very, very low. And that's something that is just super important in the whole silvopasture tree planting space, because a lot of farms have actually tried to do tree plantings, have tried to establish silvopasture, and many times with very poor success, because there just haven't been very many documented available ways to establish trees in a pasture in a systematic way. And as you can see, like, I haven't taken any systematic tally here, but I think we're well over 90% success rate, and this is in the third growing season. And these trees look amazing. They're just fantastic. Even our slower growing species like our persimmons, oaks, even they're up there. They're all right around the top of the tube. Some of them are definitely outside of the tube by now. Our honey locusts, these ones were started as, I think they weren't any more than 2 or 3 feet tall. They were pretty small, but they were grafted when we planted them. Anymore, we typically start with taller trees than these, not on the live stakes. 10 foot is generally our go-to, and these were 14 foot, which we can still do and still very easy. You can go taller than that. But 10 foot is a nice handy length and is easier to work with. But just pay attention to the tree protection methods. Like, that makes all the difference. It's very systematic. So typically what we're doing is we're using a 6 foot tall plantra tree shelter, and it has a fiberglass stake on the inside. So if we look inside of here, you can see just a little bit of a corner of that fiberglass post. So it has a fiberglass stake on the inside that allows this whole thing to be an electrical insulator, so you can run electric wire right up to it. We put a heavy layer of mulch around the base of every tree, and by now that is mostly gone, but you can see some wood chips left here at the base. So we do about 2 5-gallon buckets worth of mulch at the base of every tree, and that does a really good job holding in the nutrients, holding in the moisture for that first year or two in particular. And even now, the forages are not as thick right around the base of the tree, giving it just a little bit more of an establishment period. A little bit more support in those first critical years. And the first year, it tends to suppress the vegetation almost completely. Year 2, they start to come in again. And by year 3, it comes in much stronger. It's typically how it goes. And that's what we're seeing here too. It is not uncommon to see plantings where farmers have done this themselves and seen a 90% failure and a 90% mortality rate. That's more the rule than the exception, unfortunately. And it's really just due to there's so many things that want to eat trees, kill trees, outcompete them. You got your forages that are tall, and what often happens is if folks exclude cattle. So imagine here, if we have this row of trees, if you were to exclude cattle 5 feet on either side, you create a fence on either side. What happens is that whole area would grow up in forages, and then you're losing production, and you're getting vegetation that's going to outcompete those trees when they're small. When they're this big, it doesn't matter quite as much, but when they're really small and they're just getting started, it's a lot to outcompete those trees. So what we find is what I call green death is you get vegetation that gets really tall, really thick, and then either the vegetation outcompetes the trees, or voles and other rodents get in there, and then they will girdle the trees, or a combination of the two. And that's really the main killer of trees. Livestock, in my experience, kill fewer trees in a silvopasture than rodents and just competing vegetation. So the nice thing about these tree tubes and this protection system is you're only taking a really, really tiny area out of production, and the livestock can graze right up to it. So that really, really helps in the establishment process. And then just a couple systematic things that you want to do. You want to have the mulch around every one of them. Wood chips is what we typically use, but you could use grass, you could use spoiled hay, you could use other things. You want to have each tree protected from browsing. You want to have the tree shelters protected, and typically we use polywire to protect them. And I'll show you the setup in another video. And just getting through and doing maintenance in the first couple of years, being able to come through twice a year is typically what we recommend. Weeding inside of the tube if needed to take out any weeds that are out competing the tree inside of there, doing any corrective pruning as needed, and just making sure that the trees are not being damaged by livestock. Those are all the things that you need to do in those first couple of years, but you can see a tremendous success rate if you follow those fairly simple steps and get something absolutely gorgeous like this.